All right, it has been a crazy, crazy weekend, or maybe just last week. Like now that we
Last
get to
week.
the FPEA convention earlier, it's turned into almost an entire week of it for packing and unpacking and going. Well, welcome, welcome, and thank you for being with us on this Monday. We'll give it a kickoff start with a thanks to our top sponsors. We have two more top sponsors that we'll be adding to this very soon. So stay tuned for those. We'll probably have them up by next week. So we're really excited about that. But thank you to FPEA for being one of our special top sponsors and for the largest convention, a homeschool convention in the U.S. That we just got back from. It was a really interesting event, and well, that's pretty much what we're going to be talking about today. So many questions, so many people stopped by our booth, so many things happening. So here we all are. We have from left to right, we have Crystal Crawford. That's my wife. So we say, yeah. Wait, where's my? There we go. Yeah, and we have Dina Fox, who's on our board, and Kim Hannon, who's also on the HEF Connect board. And then, of course, we have Brenda Dickinson and myself. Where do you guys want to start? We have a couple of questions. We've been getting like a million questions since during the convention at the booth and things like that. We can roll through questions or anything. But I would say, what was your impression? What did you take away from the event?
Homeschooling is not going anywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
good.
for sure.
Yeah,
And
no,
not only is it not going anywhere, we saw a lot of, I guess in some ways, compliments from mainstream education by how they showed up in groves at our convention for the first time.
that's a positive way to spin that. That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, I'm so proud of you. Yeah, that takes an effort.
No, but we did. We saw a lot of new
We
vendors,
did a
Mhm.
lot of new vendors.
and we happen to know, those of us who are a little longer in the tooth, that the veteran vendors are still going strong
Mhm.
in most cases,
Yeah,
or maybe they've rebranded a little, or maybe they've combined forces for some new agendas to help people, but they're still there and still available. And so we now have quite the amount of opportunities.
that's
Mhm.
true. Vicky
And
is on. She's in our comments. Hi, Vicky. Thanks for stopping by the booth. It was great to see you. I hope you got enough of the flyer packets that we had. So hopefully that'll work out well. Kim, what was your takeaway?
I mean, just to piggyback off of Dina's comment too, I noticed so many young families. There were so many babies in tow, and that's just
Yeah,
really exciting to see that there's this whole new generation of moms that are coming in and recognizing from the get-go that they want something different for their kids. And just to see them be encouraged through the process of convention was really cool. I was talking to a good friend of mine afterwards on the way home, and we were kind of processing through the weekend. And she asked what my biggest
mm,
takeaway was. And I think for me, having been in the homeschool world, it feels like forever, not long as many of you guys have, but it's the only education my kids know. And we're preparing for high school now. And it was almost like a little bit of a slice of humble pie for me
ooh,
to be back at the beginning essentially and say, here I am. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm so overwhelmed. I walked into the weekend just scared of the next step. And what the
mm,
convention reminded me of was there's always someone who's further down the road from you. And if you're willing to admit what you're scared of and you're willing to admit what you feel like you're not capable of, there's someone there who can provide resources and encouragement for you to take that next step in
yeah.
faith. So that was just a really cool takeaway for me. I still don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing for high school, but I'm not afraid of it anymore.
Yay,
good.
that's great.
Yeah.
Well, but the thing that to me is very interesting is when we started homeschooling and hit that point, there was nothing.
Mhm.
Now there's so many opportunities for high school that it is very difficult to decide what direction you're going to go. There's Florida Virtual School, kids even are starting to do dual enrollment in 10th grade. Those options were not available to us back then.
No.
And, you know, there are all kinds of school programs that you can select individual courses. And exciting is that there are home education families who are providing instructional programs that all the kids are home educated. So there's community that wasn't there in the past. There's just a lot of opportunities. So really it's kind of deciding which pathway you want to take.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
That's true. And you know, you mentioned the being at the high school point and then realizing that you're eating that humble pie because there's so much I now realize I still don't know. I think that's one of the reasons early on why we decided to put the forum together, you know, and it's not a place to compete with the Facebook groups, right? If you have a Facebook group, there's several of them out there and they're all amazing and wonderful, but I have kind of been watching some of the background conversations happening around the First Amendment and whether or not you can say this on a platform or say that on a platform. And we didn't necessarily want to be on a platform where that could get muted or taken away from us. So that's one of the impetuses of putting together the forum. But, you know, if there are veterans who are like, no way, I've got that. I know the answer to that question. Like, dive into the forums. And if you're looking for answers, you know, the forum is there year round all the time, and it's meant to be a place where, you know, it's not just HEF giving information out to you. It's meant to be a place where you guys can connect and collect. And from that interaction, it'll help us identify ambassadors, you know, people who are in the know in their areas, and we can give them badges and help set them up so that, you know, they can be seen and better help the community as we grow. So
Absolutely.
I love that that was one of your takeaways, especially as a veteran homeschooler. You know, you're even there going, hey, there are things I don't know. And maybe we can bridge the gap on some of those things with our forum. So
I didn't get a chance to go around and talk to all the vendors, but I did notice that there were quite a few colleges there, and they are looking to get homeschoolers enrolled in their colleges.
Absolutely. There were more colleges. I mean, I don't have numbers because I didn't do that yet, but it definitely felt like there were more colleges represented than there have ever been before.
I agree.
Yeah. And it was really cool to talk to them because they each just have that one thing that's a little different than everybody else. So everybody who's looking to be on a college track, or even just the kids who are looking for dual enrollment, there really is something for everybody out there. And it's just a matter of making those connections, of finding the place that's right for you. I mean, I was even talking to one, I don't remember off the top of my head which college it was, but they have a whole technical course option for kids that are not necessarily looking for a college degree, but you know, that was a really cool to see them recognizing the need for that skills training and not just the degree, and having that option for those who are looking at an alternative path.
Fabulous. Jason, I sent you a copy of Governor DeSantis's office put out the day he spoke, the morning after he spoke. Oh, that was a huge getting to have at the keynote, have Governor DeSantis be there. That was thrilling. Really enjoyed hearing him. And one of the things he put out on his social media the next morning is that Florida is the homeschool state. And 10 years ago, 2013, I had already graduated my oldest at that point. There were 77,000 homeschoolers in the state of Florida. And in 2023, we had 155,000.
That's right.
It's over double.
It's doubled. Yeah.
I think COVID had a lot to do with that. We were gradually increasing in numbers, but there was a big jump after COVID because I think parents got to see the curriculum that their children were being taught in the public school, and they were forced into teaching their kids at home by the public schools because they shut down the schools. And so parents saw, do this, it's not that difficult. had a big surge in the numbers of parents choosing to home educate their kids or direct the education of their kids, or choose a scholarship program. So in a way, COVID had its negatives, but that was one of the positives I see coming out of COVID.
I agree.
Sure.
I agree. I'm reminded of the verse that I've come to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the children to the fathers. And if God wanted to use COVID for that, then so the better.
And that's one thing I did see at the convention. I mean, I've seen this before, but how engaged the fathers are in looking at their children, looking after their children, being engaged with their children, and interested in their education. So you just saw lots of fathers there.
Yeah, I mean, we had the kids there. Chris, my husband, spent the entire week with the kids while I was doing my thing. I'd pop in here and there to hang out with them for a bit, but he was super dad this weekend with the kids. It's hard.
Yay.
Yeah, it was great.
I think
and
we ran
really,
into him
I mean, to
once.
Dina's point, COVID was a big part of that. It was, we always homeschooled, but he wasn't always necessarily on board with it. He was just going along for the ride. And COVID really helped him to see what was actually happening on a day-to-day basis in the house. And definitely was that turning point for him to go from going along for the ride to being truly a homeschool advocate. And that was the point when he shifted to, they are never stepping foot in a public school. Like, we're going to just do this all the way through. So,
yeah, that's epic.
That's amazing to hear you say that, because I would have thought your husband would have been on board all the way.
He is now.
Good.
Yeah.
It's funny because, like, in our house, it was the opposite. I was the one who I was like, we are homeschooling 100%. And Crystal was like, what? What is that? Like, I don't know. I'm not so sure.
I didn't really know very many homeschoolers growing up. And at one point in early elementary school, I actually asked to be homeschooled, and my parents were like, no, absolutely not. So, and I had overall a positive experience in public school, but I think mine is like a rare experience. I went to an elementary school where the principal led prayers before every assembly, even though it was a public elementary school. So, I really was fearful of a lot of things about homeschooling because I just didn't know much about it, and my concept of it was very isolated. And the more I looked into it, though, I actually started teaching for homeschool groups before my kids were old enough to even, like, I think my oldest was like 2. And so by the time they were old enough to start schooling, I was all in, because I had seen the support that's there, the resources, the community. I'd seen how different it actually is from what I was picturing in my mind, which is ironically the fight that we're fighting now with so many people. And, even when we go in the Capitol, because so many people see it the way that I saw it before I really got into the world and realized how rich an experience homeschooling is, especially in Florida, because of how many resources we have. And almost every area of the state has this wealth of community and resources and things that you can participate in. So,
right. Yeah, we're so blessed in Florida. We really are. I don't think people realize how lucky we are.
Well, we're definitely becoming the homeschool state. It's funny seeing that graphic that Governor DeSantis's team put out, because we've mentioned that a number of times on our stream, and I know that was also a part of the conversation that I had with a lot of people who came up to the booth, because a lot of them wanted to ask, what's up with the ESAs? Do we take the money or do we not take the money? And I think that shift in the explosion of the homeschool population plays a huge part in that conversation, right? Because there are a lot of people who are running from what they think is a broken system. They look at it, there are flaws. I think some of the flaws that I saw from working in public schools, especially here in Florida. I didn't work in any public schools in Alabama where I'm from, but I worked in some of the ones here, and some of the flaws that I saw left me thinking, I don't want my kids in this environment. But others have seen different flaws, and we all just kind of have walked away at our own pace and different reason, but COVID had a lot of people leaving all at once. And there's a, what's the word? There is a general ease and disposition of being provided for, that there's a comfort with that. And it's easy for some people, those people coming out of that broken system, to reach for the money and go, oh yeah, absolutely. It empowers them. It emboldens them to take a step that they were maybe afraid of. They didn't know how to do it. Where the resources come from. We want to get away. We just, there's something in the way. There's an obstacle in the way. And I think that the PEP scholarship in particular is one of those that helps them see the opportunity and not necessarily be so terrified of it.
Mm-hmm.
So even without questioning, it's just like, okay, yes, give me that. This will help me. And then on the other end of our beautiful homeschool community, we have the traditional, original OG homeschoolers who will not touch it. No questions asked, just won't go near it. And so we have both of the opposite ends of the spectrum, those who will take it without questioning and those who will generate fear without even questioning it. And a lot of the conversations I ended up having at the booth were, slow down and think critically. You don't have to take it. You don't have to take it. But hear the arguments. Mm-hmm. Think it through, right? Don't blindly run from it, and don't blindly accept it. Please don't blindly accept it. Because a lot of the things that the fear-based movement in the homeschool community, a lot of that is based in some history, in some fact. It's got its reasons, and they're not necessarily wrong. And the watchfulness over the program needs to be intact, not fear and running from it, but the watchfulness over it. We need to channel that watchfulness into the program, and come alongside those who are opening their arms, going, yes, money, this is how I'll do it. Just give it to me, please. Come alongside them and go, yeah, slow down though. Like, pull the reins back. Let's talk about some of the difficult things. Let's have those conversations. Facebook is not helping at all either, because it's just a bunch of it's Twitter light, right? It's a bunch of punchlines and gotchas, and it can degrade the conversation. But it was interesting to see all of the diverse options there, like to see so much. I did so many families that had little kids that they hadn't started yet, and they're looking into it, and then we had those who were like, yeah, we had 9 kids and we're helping with the grandkids now. Like, there's so much on in both ways, just swirling around at the convention, and they're all making their way and diving into the different options. And I think that that's one of the key things that moving forward we really kind of need to bring to the front, right? Is that home education is truly different than public school. For the new families coming in, go, hey, look, Brenda's always saying that it takes 3 years. Is it 3 years to learn to homeschool? The first year, you think it's public school at home. And then like the second year, you realize you don't have to do every problem in the book, and that there are ways that it can be different. And then the third year, you kind of are like, okay, we've got that. We don't need to do all of this. We can do our own thing. And
then you hit high school and realize you actually don't know what you're doing.
Valid point as well.
Yeah. I mean, to your point with that, Jason, like, I'll be honest, I was one of those homeschoolers when I first got the text about the bill. I freaked out. The work that Brenda, that you guys did on the bill, and the way that you were able to separate it into 2 separate programs, and the whole way that was all lined out, it's been so interesting to be kind of on the outside watching that process happen and see how many safeguards you put in for families to make sure that whether you're taking the scholarship or not, it's protected. And I mean, people who I know who don't know this yet are going to be shocked, but I applied for the PEP for this upcoming school year.
Hey, wow. Look at you exercising your opportunity.
It just, I was, in being critically thinking and looking through the process, I know that it can change, right?
Mhm.
And I'm going to be very vigilant in what the laws are continuing to say, the work that you guys are doing. And
Yes.
at any point, if I feel like I'm not comfortable with what I'm losing in my freedom to get the money, I'll
Mhm.
let go of the money, and I will gladly
Right.
let go of the money to get that freedom. But for right now, the freedom's there with the money. So
Mhm.
I'm going to take the opportunity to be able to provide more for my kids and be able to say yes to things that I wouldn't be able to say yes to otherwise. I
Yeah.
mean, Jason and I were talking, kids are expensive. Like all the things, like one of my sons, we were talking about stuff. He's like, but I thought homeschooling was free. I'm like, oh, buddy, I don't think so. But
Right.
when that whole process was happening, the conversations that I kept having over and over again with people was recognizing that as a traditional homeschool family, I stand on the platform of educational freedom.
Mhm.
Period. Right?
Period.
That needs to be a complete sentence. And that means that if you choose a different form of freedom to educate your children, I need to be fully supportive of that, just in the way that I expect you to be fully supportive in the way that I'm choosing to direct my kids' education.
Yes.
You know, whether it's classical conversations or an
Yes.
umbrella school, right? We're not judging that way one way or another. We shouldn't be judging one way or another if you're taking the PEP or not.
Yeah.
The most important part of it, like you said, Jason, is that critical thinking and being aware and being an advocate, paying attention to what's happening in Tallahassee when you guys are posting updates, to be vigilant in that. That's how we're going to protect it the best way that we can, is by the more people who are aware of what's going on in Tallahassee, the more we're going to be able to protect the freedoms that we have to continue to educate however we see fit as best for our own kids.
Mhm.
In the
So,
beginning, when they started trying to push forth the scholarships, I would say maybe in around 2002, there was a lot of pushback against these scholarships, especially from the teachers' unions and the public schools.
Mhm.
But one of the phrases that the proponents of giving parents more choices, and back then it was just to attend a private school and have the money go directly to the private school through the parent. They had to sign off that they wanted to spend their money there. Was we've got to reach critical mass, meaning you've got to have enough parents pushing back against those people who want to add regulation to it or want to control it, that the legislators are afraid to go against the
Right.
majority of the parents.
Right.
So
Right.
I think that's what we're doing in home education,
Mhm.
um, even if it's a combined group of people, those that choose traditional home education, those that are in the UA scholarship, those that are in the PEP, the critical mass of parents saying, wait, don't take
Mhm.
away my freedoms.
Right.
And they voice that in the Capitol. That's what's going to keep us free here in Florida, instead of
Right.
all of the infighting as to, oh, well, I don't
Correct.
take it, or I do take it, or you're wrong and you're not a traditional homeschooler. It's parental freedoms of choice is the important key
Absolutely.
issue here, whether you direct the education of your children through a scholarship or tradition or private schools or umbrella schools. If we all stand together and we have enough people saying the same thing, it's going to make a huge difference in the way legislators look at us.
Yes. Let me catch up
Absolutely.
on comments real quick because I think that some of these also play into what we're saying. Greg and Des Underwood said, "Y'all are so dedicated to meet on Memorial Day." Vanessa says, "I also think we have a broken system." So this goes back to earlier comment. Being able to homeschool has been a blessing to our family. My husband was also one of those with the desire to homeschool even before we got married. I love to know that Florida is being known as the homeschool state. Absolutely. Anna Maria says the financial burden of inflation can motivate you to take money. Here is a fact to help you decide. The homeschool movement was built without financial support of government. That's true. Yep. So making sure, I think that's, we'll come back to that. That's really a good point. And then Jane says, as pioneers, we owe so much to Brenda Dickinson and her husband, watching every choice we made with their help after the Sunshine State Law. Music, sports, speech help. So thank you for pointing that out. That's so true. Anna Maria makes a great point. The financial burden of inflation can motivate people. The financial pressure is a lever and can be used as leverage, but only when dependent upon it. And I think one of the things that I ended up saying a lot in conversation with families when they would visit the booth and ask some of these questions was, we have to maintain the ability to walk away from something, right? If we don't maintain our ability to walk away, we don't have any negotiating power. So the important things that are a part of that, I think there's two that are key. Maybe you guys have more, but for me, when I look at it, I see two key things. One, keep your portfolio. It's not required as a part of PEP. At home education, it's required, but it's not required as a part of PEP. But it gives you the confidence knowing that if you decide to leave it at any moment in the middle of the year or whenever it is, you haven't missed a step. You go right back to where your portfolio is. You've missed nothing. There's no gap. You don't have to worry about any of that. So you take the negativity and the worry out of being a motivational factor for your decision of what to do, whether to do it or not. And then the second thing is stay independent of the money. Do not become dependent. So I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not giving financial advice. Let me just give that disclaimer right out of the gate.
Right.
But I think that, we watched a lot of parents who might see the money and go, oh, I have 8,000, and then they spend way ahead, and then they're in a bind, and then they're behind, or they're waiting for that reimbursement to come to make up for this or that. And as you get into a place where it's not year one, but year 2 or 3, and maybe you're in the throes planning ahead for what you've spent now and not spent, and now you need it. You've planned all of it around all of these different classes, and you're unfamiliar with how to do it even without it. It's very important that we maintain an independency from the money itself, that we can in fact walk away from it. It's there to enrich, right? It's there to enrich and to provide on top of, and take it, our education, a step further, but it's not the sole part of it. And if you're new to homeschooling and PEP is the way that you look at only being able to do it this way, my encouragement to you is to get in some of the Facebook groups or our forum and connect with the veteran parents who have been there and done that. And Dina, you have a mentoring moms thing that you do, and there are lots of not programs, but there are a lot of groups or meetings and things like that, co-ops that are useful to help people bridge that gap, that knowledge gap of how do we do this, and really kind of figure out the ins and outs of those so that you have confidence to do it without the money, and then you can opportunistically take it because it's of advantage to you, and when it stops being an advantage, you can dip.
Right.
And I think that's critical.
I also think it's I think probably one of my roles in speaking on behalf of HEF is the reality person. And let me just, to the crowd out there of people who are raising concerns, and I appreciate concerns, even if they end up not being founded, we should consider them. We should reason together about these things. These are good conversations for us to have. Character is what keeps you from being dependent on things. Character. And we, as a homeschool community in general, over the last 40 years, have character. We have walked away from the money already once. We will do it again if we need to. The money is being forcibly taken out of our tax dollars and put into a system we do not agree with, support, or condone a lot of what is going on. And we walked away. We already walked away from the money. We will do it again. The other part of the character that we show as a community at large is that we will do whatever it takes to get our kids what they need. And if that means that we our kid needs something and the ESA is going to help with that, then we will figure out a way to find the appropriate test that will be best for them, and we will get them what they need.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of if/or statements, and they're not logical. We are already taking government money as homeschoolers under the county when we dual enroll. When we go to the public school for sports, that money's coming from somewhere if we choose to participate and take some classes or be in
Right.
band. There is money we are taking. We may not be as aware of it because it's familiar to us, but no
Right.
one who's home educating through the county is doing absolutely everything with zero government funding, even if they go to the library.
Right.
It's so important. You said you breezed over, I think a key part in understanding what you were just saying there. You said there's a lot of conversations of if or. Can you elaborate and draw? I know that we had questions at FPEA even during our presentation where we got to kind of open that up a little bit more, but could you open that, be more specific and open
Sure.
that problem up?
Yes, a lot of the things we heard in the different group discussions that we led and information sessions at FPEA were about the state of the scholarships and then also the state of home education law.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of discussion about we don't want to, is our homeschool freedom going to be at risk if we participate in the PEP program and take an ESA?
Right.
And yes, absolutely. As is your home education law every single legislative session.
What do you mean by that?
All it takes is one bill, one change of vocabulary to change everything. In law, vocabulary is everything. And if someone decides from even good intentions, really good, because I believe the PEP program was good intentions to
Yes.
give home educating families access to funds. I believe that was positive intention, no malice intended.
Yep.
And it took our lobbyists with the expertise and time and energy and knowledge of the law and relationships with everyone at the Capitol that they've been working with for years and years to have conversations to steer that around to the correct language for everyone. And that happens with your home education law every single session. So yes, we need
Yes.
to be vigilant, but not just for the new PEP option, for every single thing that affects families, educating their families in Florida.
If I can just add something
No.
to that.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Some of the families I spoke to at our booth, because one of the projects that we have is the Tell Your Story project, where we're asking families to submit short videos kind of explaining how homeschooling, whether with funds or without, has impacted their family, because we want those to be able to show the legislators what parents are doing and how diverse these approaches to homeschooling are, and it doesn't all look one way. But in that conversation, I had some families tell me, like, well, we don't want anyone to know what we're doing. That's why we're homeschooling. Like we we kind of, there's a mindset among some homeschoolers that if anyone sees what we're doing, knows what we're doing, then our freedoms are at risk. And it was an interesting conversation because I don't think that people realize, if you're home educating with the county, there are oversights in place. Like you're required to do a portfolio. The superintendent can call you in to review things. If you're with an umbrella school, a lot of people see that as the loophole where you can homeschool with no oversight. But technically, you're considered a private school student, and at any point, all of the regulations that apply to private schools could be called into effect. And so I want to encourage people, like Jason said, to think critically and ask questions. And whatever path you choose, we're here for your freedoms. We want you to be able to choose whatever path you choose. But I really want you to know what you're choosing and to be making those choices with all the information instead of just a fear-based choice or because it's what your friend said was the best thing to do. Because when you don't have all the options or all the information on all the options, you could be really missing opportunities that could really be a benefit to your family.
Sure.
So that's just I just wanted to throw that out there because I saw a lot of that fear discussion happening just around the fact that we want to be completely off the grid.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want anybody to know anything that we're doing, and that PEP feels scary because what are they going to do with our test results? And it said we have to submit a learning plan. What does that mean? And it's an unknown. But if you ask the questions and get the, it's really not any more oversight than any of the other options right now, which is why we're keeping a careful watch on it. But yeah, please just if you run into a fear point, ask questions, get into our forum, send us a message. Let us help provide you the information so you can make the best choice for your family.
Brenda, you have your hand up.
In the early days, before we had all of these options, we just had the homeschool law. Some of the districts were trying to figure out what they were supposed to do. And so we had in Pinellas County, the school district required every parent to bring in their portfolios and examples of what they were doing. And people were saying, "Oh my gosh, what are we going to do?" I said, "Take your stuff, show them what you're doing." And in the end, it was like, wow, these parents are doing a phenomenal job.
Mm-hmm.
And they were so impressed, they ended up hiring a home educator to be the liaison so that, they could help parents in the homeschooling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another example was Orange County. And they, I guess, had a new attorney or a new person in that position. And they required the parents to bring their stuff in so they could do a portfolio review for every homeschooler in the county. And their lobbyist came to me and he said, "Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Our hallways are from floor to ceiling full of stuff. People are bringing in their little red wagons full of stuff. We don't have the people to review this stuff." I said, "You're not required to review the stuff." And he said, "What?" I said, "It says you can if you want to." And he said, "Oh my gosh." So he went back to their attorneys, and the attorneys agreed with me, and they quit doing the reviews. It's not that they're trying to intrude, but the fact that we had the opportunity to showcase what we're doing, we won over many parents and teachers, even in the portfolio reviews or the annual evaluations. When my teacher, and this was, back in we started homeschooling in before it was actually legal. But after the law passed, we had a teacher come do the review, and my kids were so excited about what they'd been doing and what the education is. She said, "Hold on, let me go get a pad. I want to take down some of these notes. Maybe I can do some of these with my classes." And the enthusiasm that your children have about learning is contagious. So I would say never be put into a box where you're fearful of the authorities. You may have the opportunity to change minds and
That's
hearts,
right.
showcasing what you're doing.
Yes.
Yeah. Lack of involvement out of fear doesn't help change or protect the situation. Getting involved, getting engaged, critically thinking. There is always a line. The question is, where is the line going to be when it's drawn? And who will be standing on it to make sure it doesn't get pushed further back?
One example was this session. I know Crystal's not a fan of public speaking, but because our rights and freedoms were in jeopardy, she stepped forward, came to the Capitol, spoke in a couple of committee meetings, brought the children, which they said, "What do we do with our children?" I said, "Bring them, please bring them." And here's these precious children standing up in front of these legislators. And she used the example of, we can buy guitar lessons, but my daughter's hand, and you could see this thin, small 10-year-old, her hands could not hold or play the neck of an adult guitar. And it was a visual picture to those legislators that, oh, what we were thinking may not be so good. And one of them actually said to you, Crystal, what?
He said, seeing the kids here has changed this from ink on a page to something real. Like, we see you, we heard you, we see your children. And this has made a difference in how, for him at least, in how he was thinking.
Well, I think that was a big turning point because the Senate wasn't even going to get involved.
Right. And that was Senator Roussan, who is also a Democrat.
Correct.
Right? So there's multiple layers of truth to what you're saying about not necessarily even just running from one side out of fear, right? It's not even about sides when it comes to the politics. It's about freedom and finding that line and standing together on that line. Dina, you said something earlier, and I think I should have wrote it down because I was waiting. It dovetailed nicely with something Crystal said about the tell your story part of the project. Oh, you had said we walked away from the money.
Yeah, we already walked away.
You said that so quick, and I want to slow down a minute because I think that's so important to realize that that's a provision. You know, it's a program that exists. It's funded, and it's easy to drop our kids off there and just let it be.
Yeah.
And that initial staring at the ledge, taking that step out into the thin air on faith, we did that.
Yeah.
We did that. We walked away from the money once, and we can do it again.
That was a hard one. I mean, but those of us that did this back in the 1900s, as the kids are somebody said that to me the other day. Oh, that was back in the 1900s.
Oh man, no!
When we rode in and we are in our buggies with our horses drawn kids,
in the 1900s.
That's what they're picturing, though.
When I started home educating, I didn't just walk away from this built-in babysitting and somebody wrestling with my kid that didn't want to do the worksheet or whatever system. I walked away from the comfort of family being supportive, of friends understanding, of church members thinking we were crazy. If you think that an ESA is going to be harder to leave than that, you're crazy. All I have to do with an ESA is say no thank you and move on.
Especially in Florida, where PEP is separated out from home education. And that ability to split is protected. Brenda, thank you so much for your
that made all the difference.
It makes a huge difference.
All the difference.
Huge. Becky says, 18 years ago, when I began homeschooling, Becky Lavender, she says, I was terrified of oversight, government control of anything, was wanting to be an off-the-grid schooler. Then my child wanted to attend university, and I realized we needed to mesh with the process of government school board process to some point and learned there is a happy balance. A lot of my, quote, fear was irrational. Now we have such an open mind to finding and using resources to help us have opportunities and help my children have the most opportunities for future college plans. It's a balance, but really appreciate the work you all are doing to help us sift through all the right info. Becky, thank you so much for speaking up and saying that. That's huge.
Thank you.
That's huge.
If they think there's fear out there now with what they're doing, imagine in 1984, there were 5 families being prosecuted, not for home education because there was no opportunity for home education. These families had put their children in what we call an umbrella school, which was the only option because there was only public, private, or religious schools that were options for meeting compulsory attendance. But they were the ones that were being prosecuted because they were directing the education of their children in the homes. So the small band of homeschoolers who were already homeschooling under, talk about the umbrella, talking about home educating their children at home and keeping them at home during the day so that nobody knew they didn't go to public school. There was a handful of people that stepped out in faith, took the initiative, and believe me, by the end of that year, DOE could have called up any school district in the state and had us all prosecuted for truancy. But God protected that option, because I do believe that that's how children grow up and learn to be productive citizens, is when they're adults with adults more than they're with their peers. And that, to me, is one of the real drawback of public school, is they learn from their peers, not from other parents, and know how to be successful.
What do you mean? Skibbity toilet, LOL. We got the Riz.
We got our phones. We can talk to each other, but they
My
can't
TikTok
talk in
brain
person.
taketh over.
Exactly.
As a former public school middle school teacher, I can say that's exactly why I'm a homeschool parent now, because I was in that classroom and I remember looking around and saying, this is before I even had kids. My kids will never be in this environment ever. Yeah. And that was 15 years ago.
Oh man. All right. So I will say we're running, our time is nearing an end. So I just want to be mindful of that. I want to say one of the things I wish, if I could go back and do our presentation again. I didn't think of it literally until just now. I wish I could go back and present Senator Simon's closing remarks for PEP at the Q&A that we did, because I think that what he said, and they're on our YouTube, so if anybody is wondering what I'm talking about, you can actually find them on our YouTube. But he was very forthright with what he said, and he was talking about how parents need to be very careful of what they're posting online and the kind of things that they say in these groups, and just asking for help to get something covered with the scholarship. It's a good thing. You need help. I get it. But you do have to be mindful that there are people who are watching who don't care about your help or your need for your funds or your desire to be free and home educate. They only care about embarrassing you. And the issues that we ran into during this legislative session that pushed back really, really hard on the spending was, a lot of them were from an article that was in the news in August about these crazy home education expenses. Look at what these parents are buying. But the money for PEP didn't land until October. So the optics and the embarrassment is all that matters in a lot of ways. It's not all that matters, but it matters so much that we have to pay attention. We have to watch our community. We have to be not just in watch over the legislative process and the legislators, but our other homeschoolers, our new ones and our veterans. We need to participate with critical thinking in some of these conversations. Is it good to talk about this? Is this better as a private conversation if you're needing help? There is a purchasing guide, and there are people who can help navigate the purchasing guide. Posting those things in public, even if it turns out that the answer to getting that reimbursement is no, because it doesn't fit, once that's posted publicly, it doesn't matter. They're going to say you tried, and they're going to dangle that in front of everybody and show that you've got these crazy ideas. And whether, public school and homeschool, whether homeschooling is in fact public school at home or not, doesn't matter when they can just dangle embarrassing moments in front of you and just point it. We're in the middle of a political season, so those sound bites and clips, what people do with them, it should be no surprise to you that people are waiting to do that to you as well.
At that point, though, we need to tell parents, get out there, get involved in the political process, walk districts for the person that you support, who supports your right to home educate in any way you choose to do so. Because when they get to the Capitol next session, they will know what home education is like, and they will meet your children, which will turn their hearts, because we've seen that happen over and over again, where they see the proof in the pudding and they become a fan of parent-directed education.
Mm-hmm.
And go visit your capital. Go up there and take your children, teach them about the legislative process and this power of state government as opposed to federal government. Get your kids engaged in the things that are very, very important to your everyday life.
A funny illustration is that a group of homeschoolers were really active in a political campaign in South Florida. And in fact, one of the home educated students kind of acted as an assistant campaign manager, got very close to the candidate. And he became that candidate who was a legislator became the majority leader in the House. Let's see, was he majority? I think he was majority in the House. If not, he was minority. But I needed to get to him with specific language or something to watch in another bill on our behalf. And so I contacted the mom and I said, I really need to talk to the representative on this issue. Can you get me through? She said, well, I can't, but my son can. I'll tell him to call you. So he calls me and he says, okay, you have one favor. I'll make the telephone call for him, but you can't ask for anything else. Is this your one choice? I said, yes. So he made the telephone call. We can't do this anymore. On the floor or text or however he communicated. And the legislator came out into the hall so I could talk to him about something that was happening in another bill he had to kill. But it was the student that influenced that particular thing, because they had been so much a part of that political campaign. That's the kind of influence your children can have, or you can have.
That's right.
Yes.
Speaking of influence, can I give a shout out?
Yeah, go ahead.
At FPEA yesterday's graduation ceremony, the Craig and Brenda Dickinson Statesman Scholarship was awarded to one of the graduates, and that graduate's name is Scarlett Stevens. She received that scholarship, and it is thanks to all the work that was recognized that Craig and Brenda did and are doing through Brenda. And I thought you would want to know that Scarlett is benefiting from that.
Yay. That's awesome.
We wish you well, Scarlett. We hope that you maybe send us something that tells us what you're doing, and we can share that with people, because you will inspire. Scarlett, if this gets to you, if y'all know Scarlett, somebody listening, send it out to their family.
Yes.
And let them know that we'd love to know what she's going to do and where she's going to go with that scholarship, that we can inspire some of the younger families about what things might look like in 12 years.
That's right. Absolutely. That's a great way to wrap up today, I think. Today is, in fact, Memorial Day, though. So I do want to say that we all wish you a meaningful Memorial Day as you remember the sacrifices of those who came before us to kind of pave the way and provide the freedoms that we hold so dear. I know that we as homeschoolers hold those freedoms very, very dear. So we're with you in that. We thank you all for being with us on the podcast today. And since I have all of you still for a brief moment, I'm going to take advantage of this. I never do this and I never do it very well, but here's our support page on HEF. So flhef.org/support. We have been working very hard. We now have the 501c3 set up so that all of the donations that come in through here go into our charitable organization and are able to be written off as charitable donations. Because all of the work that we do, while we do lobby, and we have HEF, the Home Education Foundation, for lobbying, HEF Connect goes to support the 80% of the other work that we do of advocacy with parents when it's a matter of FHSAA or a dual enrollment issue, or going back and forth with Step Up. There's so much work that we do that's not very, very specifically technically lobbying, So there is a place on the page to support just the lobbying if you so wish, but I kind of wanted to walk everybody through how this works, because what I have found is that it would be really, really helpful for all those people who are loyal and love the work that we do to be equipped to go and help spread the message and spread the word and help us find the support that we need. We have several tiers set up to make it easy. There's $5 a month, so it's as little as a cup of coffee a month, which a lot of people can do that. Using any of these options, you can just sign up for a monthly subscription and set it and let it go. If you love what we do and you want to do more, there are ways to do more, 10, 25, or 50 a month. And then for our business owners, people who are either home education families who have done well for themselves and just want to support home education, or if you have a business that's specifically tied to your home education in Florida, the vendor support tier at $100 a month does also get you a listing on our recognition wall on the website, so people can see that you have a business and that you support what we do. As you scroll further down the page, you'll see that if you don't like any of those options, you can do a custom amount directly to HEF using Zelle. There's a separate page that'll walk you right into how to do that, step-by-step directions. And at the very end, you can also choose to make that one a monthly recurring donation or a yearly recurring donation, and that goes straight into HEF Connect directly to us. And then if you go further down, there's a separate donation section here where you can donate directly to the lobbying. So if you're not interested in the 501c3, if you don't care about that and you just want to support the lobbying directly, there is still a place on the website to do that, and we've made it easy for you to find those ways. And now here's where it gets really good, because if you're one of those people who's trying to help drum up support, if you keep going down the page, there are other ways to get involved. And we go through sharing your story, sharing our updates, helping us get the word out, inviting us to speak, and there are ways to interact. This is kind of a little packet for you to kind of help us find the support that we need in all the various ways. So that being said, now I think we're all done. We can call this meeting adjourned. Is there anything anybody wants to add before we go?
Happy Memorial Day. Have a great summer.
Absolutely. Cool.
Pool time.
It is. It's pool time. You guys go enjoy some hot dogs and some family fun and some pool time, and we'll let you guys go. We want to also once again say thank you to our top sponsors, FPEA, being on this list for now, and I think next week we're going to see 2 more come in, and we're very excited to make that announcement when it comes. So stay tuned for more, and otherwise you guys have a meaningful Memorial Day.